The public never saw it coming. This morning, palace insiders leaked an unprecedented royal directive. Prince William has unilaterally cancelled all of Queen Camilla's upcoming engagements, stripping her of her symbolic power. Even more stunning? He's handed the reins directly to Catherine. Why now? Why her? And what's truly unravelling behind the castle walls? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. From the moment the leak hit the headlines, the royal machine was in chaos. Camilla's entire calendar was erased within hours. Not postponed, not rescheduled, cancelled. Entire diplomatic gatherings, Commonwealth tours, and ceremonial duties that had long been attributed to her role as Queen Consort gone. The move was surgical, calculated, and done with such quiet aggression that insiders whispered it was weeks, maybe months, in the making. No explanations were offered, no official statement from Buckingham Palace, just silence and a gaping power vacuum. The whispers grew louder when Catherine was spotted exiting Windsor Castle in the early morning, clutching a crimson folder, its golden seal barely visible beneath her coat. Speculation erupted instantly. Was this a formal transfer of duties? Had Camilla been blindsided? Royal aides scrambled, but their prepared statements fell flat, sounding more like stammering evasions than clarity. And when William's press secretary refused to comment entirely, the silence said more than words ever could. The public reaction was instantaneous and deeply divided. Some loyal to the monarchy's traditions were outraged, accusing William of overstepping. But an even louder wave, one that had been simmering for years, erupted in support of Catherine. Social media exploded with calls of "Queen Catherine now" and demands that the monarchy evolve fast. To many, this wasn't just about royal duties, it was about legitimacy, respect, and restoring dignity to a crown that had wandered too far into scandal. But beneath the frenzy, one truth stood unshakable. William had drawn a line. He had made a decision no heir apparent had dared make so publicly before. This was not about ceremony. This was about control, about succession, about legacy. And above all, it was about vengeance, the quiet kind that simmers for years before striking with elegance and fury. Because this wasn't just a blow to Camilla's role, it was a public rewriting of the monarchy's internal hierarchy. And Catherine was no longer the silent partner in the shadows. She was stepping into the arena. But to understand why Prince William made such a brazen move, we must first travel back to the moments that fractured this royal triangle, when Catherine was silenced, and Camilla's power began to rise. Camilla's rise to Queen Consort wasn't just a formality, it was a calculated climb. Behind palace smiles were secret deals, unseen alliances, and silent nods of betrayal. As Charles ascended, Camilla quietly expanded her influence, edging Catherine out of key roles, and someone was always watching. From the moment Queen Elizabeth's health began to visibly decline, Camilla understood the shifting sands beneath her feet. She wasn't merely stepping into a ceremonial title, she was inheriting the political vacuum of a monarchy in transition. And she moved swiftly, carefully, discreetly. It began with subtle adjustments. New charities aligned with her name, reshuffled schedules where Catherine's appearances were quietly removed, and press leaks that glorified Camilla's modern approach to queenship. It was a whisper campaign dressed in protocol, and within the walls of Clarence House, it was working. Catherine, once the golden face of the firm, began to vanish from royal briefings. No more solo engagements on key Commonwealth anniversaries, no more strategic foreign visits. Instead, her presence became sporadic, backgrounded, muted. The press noticed, courtiers noticed, and most importantly, William noticed, but he said nothing, not yet. Instead, he observed. He watched how Camilla replaced senior aides with those loyal to her, people who answered not to the institution but to the woman they now called Her Majesty. These weren't casual staffing changes. These were consolidations of power. Behind the scenes, William's frustration boiled quietly. The man groomed to inherit a kingdom was being slowly edged out of the very narrative he had been born into. Every time Catherine was left off a press release, every time Camilla took a seat reserved for a future queen, it wasn't just a slight, it was a warning. And Clarence House, now pulsing with the confidence of Charles and Camilla's reign, barely masked its growing disdain for Kensington's idealistic, reform-minded tone. The palace had split. One side stood for legacy, the other for loyalty. And neither trusted the other. Camilla's mastery wasn't in loud declarations, it was in the casual, almost invisible exercise of dominance. She smiled through ceremonies and posed for magazine spreads, but behind closed doors, she was cementing herself as an immovable force. With the Queen gone, and Charles focused on legacy preservation, Camilla had the room and the cunning to reshape the monarchy's hierarchy in her image. And every time she was handed another ceremonial title or public-facing role once earmarked for Catherine, she didn't just accept it, she owned it. Still, amid the quiet displacement, one figure remained eerily calm. Catherine. She didn't fight publicly. She didn't make noise. Instead, she withdrew with intention. She observed the moves being made against her not as a victim but as a strategist waiting for the right moment to strike. Because while the Queen's passing had left a void, it had also opened a new chapter, one where battles weren't fought with swords but with silence, patience, and precision. And in that war, Catherine was preparing for something Camilla never expected. But Catherine's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. And when the tides turned, she would be ready to reclaim everything that was stolen. She had been the crown jewel of public affection, but inside palace walls, Catherine was fading from view. The royal machine seemed determined to erase her presence. Yet in that darkness, she discovered her quiet power, and it changed everything. At first, it was subtle. An engagement postponed here, an event passed on to someone else there, then it became glaring. Catherine, once the luminous centerpiece of the royal brand, was missing from the balcony, absent from ceremonies, increasingly omitted from the monarchy's own messaging. Whispers turned into murmurs, and murmurs into concern. Body language experts noted the change. Former royal correspondents who had long admired her grace now asked, "Where is Catherine?" What they didn't realize was that her absence wasn't a retreat, it was the beginning of a reset. Behind the scenes, Catherine was under siege. The tension had become unbearable. Camilla's expanding influence was now suffocating. Catherine, used to walking a delicate line between tradition and progress, found herself caught in a silent political squeeze. It was no longer just about appearances, it was about survival. In one of the most chilling leaks ever buried by the palace, a private letter allegedly written by Catherine surfaced. In it, she expressed her unease over Camilla's growing interference. It feels deliberate. Though the palace swiftly denied its authenticity, the tone matched what insiders had been whispering for months. It wasn't just Catherine who saw the writing on the wall, William did too. He had spent years watching his wife be positioned as the future queen consort, the very embodiment of the monarchy's next chapter. But now, that narrative was being unspun, and it infuriated him. He began pulling back from public unity with Clarence House. Private moments turned into guarded war rooms. And then, just months before Queen Elizabeth's death, something shifted. Catherine was called to the Queen's private chambers twice. These weren't routine visits. According to one palace source, what was said in those quiet hours would redefine the next era of the monarchy. Whatever was discussed during those final meetings with the Queen, it changed Catherine. She emerged different, not hardened, but sharpened. No longer content to be merely graceful, she became deliberate, measured, strategic. She stopped trying to regain lost ground and instead began redrawing the battlefield. She leaned into quiet alliances, strengthened ties with key aides, and let the press speculate while she quietly maneuvered. Every appearance she made after that was precise, loaded with intention, never random. This wasn't the story of a sidelined duchess. This was the awakening of a queen in waiting, who understood that true power doesn't beg for visibility, it seizes it at the right moment. And the pain she endured in those silent months? It would become the steel in her spine. What the palace misread as weakness was in fact patience. She wasn't waiting for approval. She was waiting for the storm. But even William didn't expect the breaking point would come so soon, or from a betrayal so close to home. While the monarchy wore its stoic mask, Charles made a private choice, one that would send shockwaves through the family. Choosing Camilla meant choosing sides. And in doing so, he unknowingly sparked the wrath of his own blood. In the aftermath of the Queen's passing, the throne was not the only seat Charles assumed. He inherited a fractured family, a suspicious press, and a nation uncertain of the monarchy's relevance. But instead of reaching across the generational divide to his son, the future of the crown, Charles doubled down on the past. He leaned heavily on Camilla, not just as consort, but as confidant, strategist, and surrogate power broker. Slowly, the weight of royal engagements shifted toward her. Ceremonies that should have welcomed Catherine and William were instead recast to feature Camilla, glowing under the new title she had waited decades to wear. It wasn't long before the cracks turned into fissures. A leaked internal memo revealed that Catherine had been deliberately excluded from a highly symbolic tour of former colonies, reportedly at Camilla's recommendation. The rationale? Too much attention would shift to the younger couple. That memo, though buried by palace aides within hours, found its way into the hands of a royal biographer. And though it was never published in full, the implication was explosive. Camilla was no longer just occupying space. She was making decisions. And those decisions were pushing the monarchy further from the very image William and Catherine had spent years building: modern, relatable, and morally steady. William, already wary of his father's shifting alliances, began raising private concerns, particularly about public perception. He warned that the monarchy was leaning too heavily into nostalgia, ignoring the need for forward-looking leadership. But those warnings were met with polite deflections and cold avoidance. The distance grew unbearable when one aide overheard William, red-faced with fury, mutter under his breath, "He's choosing her over the future." That line would later echo through every palace hallway, a whispered prophecy of the battle to come. Privately, the situation was far worse. An intercepted letter meant to be destroyed exposed a conversation between Charles and Camilla discussing succession optics. The language was chillingly strategic. Camilla advised minimizing Catherine's profile to avoid, in her words, premature queen-making. Charles, rather than objecting, seemed to agree. That moment became a quiet line in the sand. It was no longer a matter of opinion. It was war by subtlety. And William, bound by protocol but burning with betrayal, began to prepare. Trust between father and son collapsed almost entirely. What had once been tense, yet recoverable, turned into cold calculation. Charles saw William as impatient, even dangerous. William saw Charles as compromised, blinded by guilt, manipulated by affection, and increasingly irrelevant to the people he was meant to inspire. For the first time in decades, there were two visions of monarchy forming under the same roof. One bound to the past, one determined to forge the future. And in the middle of it all stood Catherine, the symbol of everything the crown could still become if only someone had the courage to reclaim it. As Charles and Camilla built their fortress, William and Catherine were forging a different weapon: public loyalty, and they were ready to strike. But Catherine emerged from the shadows not as a pawn but a queen in waiting. Her return wasn't loud. It was precise, surgical, and it won the hearts of a nation hungry for dignity and grace. When the monarchy seemed most fractured, when Camilla's name dominated the headlines and Catherine's silence had become deafening, she reappeared with calculated serenity, not through press briefings or extravagant appearances, but by walking into the quiet corners of the kingdom that the crown had long overlooked: a children's cancer ward, a war memorial where she knelt, not for cameras, but for memory, a working-class community struggling with the cost of living. These were not random stops. They were strategic acts of empathy. Every handshake, every tearful embrace was a message. She never abandoned them. She was always watching, and the public responded like a tidal wave. Her speeches, delivered with trembling poise and unmistakable conviction, began to go viral. One clip, in which Catherine comforted a grieving mother with the words, "Grief changes form, but it never truly leaves us," was replayed millions of times. She wasn't preaching monarchy. She was reflecting humanity. And in a palace now shrouded in cold protocol and distant smiles, Catherine brought warmth that the people were starving for. Suddenly, op-eds that had once questioned her silence now hailed her as the moral compass of the royal family. The contrast with Camilla became impossible to ignore. While Catherine poured herself into causes with genuine connection, Camilla remained aloof, continuing engagements with stiffness and visible detachment. Headlines began to shift. The crown feels cold until Catherine speaks. Public appetite changed. The media, once loyal to the palace's hierarchy, began to quietly pivot. Commentators stopped asking if Catherine was next. They started asking why not now. And William, always strategic, always a step ahead, matched his wife's momentum. The couple began a rollout of joint appearances that felt more like a campaign than coincidence. They were smiling more, touching more, locking eyes during speeches. Every joint engagement was a masterclass in unity and message control. It wasn't just optics, it was partnership redefined. And as they stepped into these moments together, the public began to see not a prince and a duchess, but a king and queen in waiting. Then came the tipping point. The online movement, number Catherine our Queen. It started as a whisper, a few tweets, a handful of Instagram posts. But within weeks, it exploded into a global campaign. Billboards, banners, TikToks, even protests outside royal residences demanding her elevation. It wasn't just fandom, it was fury. A public vote of no confidence in Camilla and a coronation by popular will for Catherine. All while Camilla quietly receded. She missed a charity gala. She cancelled an overseas visit, citing fatigue. No formal explanation was given, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Behind palace gates, the whispers were growing, not about if Catherine would take over but when. But while the public praised her return, palace insiders were watching with unease. Because Catherine wasn't just back, she was being positioned. No cameras, no aides, just 6 people and a single decision, whether Camilla remains queen in function or is removed by influence. It was the first time William invoked the shadow protocol, and once triggered, there was no going back. Within the ancient stone walls of the monarchy, where tradition masks ambition and loyalty often disguises manipulation, an invisible council met in absolute secrecy. William had called it quietly, bypassing protocol, silencing staff, and choosing only those few who understood that power in the royal family was no longer about bloodline, it was about survival. The room held 3 senior courtiers, 2 loyal lords, and Catherine. No fanfare, just facts. And a single agenda: continuity through stability. A title so sterile, so diplomatic, it concealed the storm it carried beneath. The documents were already prepared. Drafts to redistribute ceremonial duties. Frameworks to restructure public-facing roles. Not a word against Camilla, just lines of redirection. Camilla would still hold her title, but everything that made it real, tours, speeches, patronages, representation, would be quietly reassigned. And who would receive them? Catherine. Not because of revenge, not because of spite, but because, as William stated with measured certainty, the people have chosen already, and the monarchy could no longer afford to ignore them. Yet not everyone in that room accepted the shift so easily. One courtier warned of a constitutional fracture. Another feared destabilizing the king himself. But William countered with precision. He revealed private polling numbers showing Camilla's declining favor and Catherine's overwhelming support. He read aloud a letter from a former ambassador urging the monarchy to reflect modern values and move toward figures who embodied grace, service, and renewal. And then he dropped the final blow, a subtle hint that foreign governments were beginning to request Catherine's presence over Camilla's for diplomatic appearances. The debate ended there. They voted, one by one. No raised voices, no grand declarations, just solemn nods and a shared understanding that history was shifting under their feet. Unanimous, the motion passed. William's plan was no longer a contingency. It was the new direction of the monarchy. And before they left that room, each person signed off on the transition. With it, they extinguished Camilla's ceremonial presence, not with scandal, not with spectacle, but with silence. A surgical extraction dressed in royal formality. In the hours that followed, the paperwork was delivered to the appropriate departments. Press strategies were updated. Scheduling assistants received new instructions. Camilla's upcoming appearances were replaced, quietly, with Catherine's name. No announcement was made. No press release issued. Just a slow, subtle replacement of presence until the public would look up and realize Catherine was everywhere. Camilla was gone, and no one knew when it happened. It was done. Power had shifted, not with force, but with conviction. And as the door to that meeting closed, so too did the chapter of Camilla's quiet reign. And so, the order was signed quietly, cleanly, and with no trace of hesitation. But Camilla would not take her fall in silence. She had clawed her way to the crown, and she wasn't letting go without a fight. Camilla launched a counter-offensive worthy of palace legend, and in doing so, she exposed secrets the monarchy had buried for decades. The day the Shadow Protocol was executed, a silence fell across Clarence's house, but it didn't last. Camilla had spent years watching, calculating, storing ammunition, and now, backed into a corner, she unleashed it. Within 48 hours, royal gossip columns were flooded with a surge of anonymous tips targeting Catherine's family rumors of financial improprieties, long-forgotten legal disputes, and exaggerated claims of social climbing. The timing was too precise to be coincidental. And for royal insiders, the message was clear. Camilla wasn't leaving quietly. She was pulling at the foundations, but it didn't stop there. Suddenly, William, once the untouchable heir, was in the crosshairs. Tabloid exposés began emerging, filled with oddly specific claims about his personal demeanor, his alleged rivalries with staff, his growing instability under pressure. It was character assassination in elegant packaging. None of the stories could be substantiated, but they didn't need to be. The goal wasn't to convince, it was to confuse, to blur the lines between fact and speculation so deeply that the public no longer knew who to believe. Then came the real threat. Buried in an offhanded whisper from a known royal biographer came the phrase that shook the inner circle: letters. Allegedly, Camilla's team had access to deeply personal correspondences between her and Charles, private, emotional, and, in some cases, politically sensitive. If she were to be formally removed, those letters could be leaked. And once they were public, the monarchy wouldn't just suffer embarrassment, it would suffer credibility, collapse. The threat hovered like a sword above the crown. No one spoke of it officially, but every strategist within the palace knew it had changed the game. Conflicting narratives began to emerge. Press officers issued clumsy statements. Scheduled appearances were quietly cancelled. Leaks contradicted leaks. Even seasoned reporters couldn't decipher the chaos. It was exactly what Camilla wanted: disruption. The monarchy was unraveling from within, not through scandal, but through confusion, silence, and fear. And then, just as the dust threatened to choke the institution entirely, Camilla did something no one expected. She spoke. In a rare and carefully orchestrated interview, Camilla sat across from a sympathetic journalist and delivered a masterstroke of ambiguity. "It's painful," she said, her voice low and measured, "especially when betrayal doesn't come from outside but within the family." She didn't name names. She didn't need to. The damage was done. Public speculation exploded. Was she referencing William? Catherine? One of the courtiers? Everyone became a suspect. Everyone became a target. But Catherine, ever deliberate, responded not with words, but with presence. That very evening, without any announcement or media build-up, she appeared at a children's cancer ward in East London. No photographers, no speeches, just quiet comfort, genuine laughter, and unfiltered humanity. A short clip, posted by a nurse, went viral within hours. "This is who she is," the caption read. And that single post, more than any press release or interview, cut through Camilla's chaos like a blade. The public began to see the contrast not just in action, but in spirit. Camilla had weaponized secrets. Catherine had chosen sincerity. The storm was raging, but the next move didn't come from a throne. It came from a hospital room. And it changed everything. One doctor's briefing. One hushed emergency. And suddenly, the monarchy's future was no longer about politics. It was about survival. The king's diagnosis turned everything upside down. And in that moment of mortality, all masks dropped. It began with a late-night ambulance quietly slipping past the palace gates. No sirens, no flashing lights, just a silent urgency cloaked in darkness. By dawn, King Charles had been admitted to a private wing of a hospital under a false name. No one was told, not even senior aides. The official schedule cited a minor health review, but whispers spread like wildfire among those closest to the crown. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Then came the leak. An encrypted message, traced to a foreign diplomatic source, suggested the king was being treated for a serious undisclosed condition. Blood disorder. Degenerative. Possibly terminal. No confirmation. No denial. Just a sudden tightening of security and a silence that screamed the truth. And in that vacuum, the royal machine did something it had been conditioned never to do. It panicked. Camilla, known for her composure under fire, was seen leaving the hospital visibly distraught. One photographer, perched half a block away, captured a single frame, her head in her hands, body shaking. It shattered the image of control she'd fought so long to cultivate. For the first time, she looked not like a queen but like a woman losing everything. With Charles incapacitated and the palace in disarray, William moved. Quietly, legally, decisively. Using a rarely evoked provision buried deep in royal contingency protocols, he assumed temporary authority over the monarch's duties. A move neither symbolic nor sentimental. It was constitutional. Within hours, he was signing off on state briefs, receiving intelligence briefings, and preparing for what could become a permanent transition of power. There was no coronation, no public announcement, just quiet command. But the image that seared itself into the nation's memory wasn't one of authority. It was of Catherine. Just before sunrise, a passerby spotted her entering a private chapel near Windsor, alone. No entourage, no press. The photo, blurry, grainy, almost unrecognizable, spread like wildfire. It wasn't posed, it wasn't planned, but it struck a chord so deep the headlines wrote themselves, "The Crown Prays." For a monarchy so often accused of being detached, that moment made it human again. Public sentiment shifted overnight. Whatever doubts had lingered, whatever chaos Camilla's counterattack had sown, vanished beneath the weight of a nation rallying behind a future they could finally see. The faces of resilience were no longer Charles and Camilla. They were William and Catherine, steady, grieving, but unshaken. The crown wasn't in crisis. It was evolving, and the people, after so many years of indifference, were suddenly invested again. As the king remained under medical supervision, the palace made no effort to restore Camilla's former role. Her engagements remained cancelled, her visibility reduced to whispers. She had not been pushed aside by protocol or politics, but by the fragility of life itself. And while she retreated into private rooms, William stepped forward, not as a son defending a legacy, but as a leader shaping one. But even as fate forced Camilla to step aside, William ensured her removal would be remembered not as cruelty, but as clarity. It began with a cancellation, but ended with a coronation of public trust. The monarchy didn't collapse, it evolved, and in its place stood a new kind of royalty, young, unyielding, and unafraid to rewrite history in real time. Within days of the king's hospitalization, the shift that had been whispered behind palace doors became official. Without fanfare, without resistance, Catherine's name replaced Camilla's across every royal briefing. Ceremonial patronages that had once been closely guarded were reassigned to the Princess of Wales. Events that had been quietly postponed were rebooked, with Catherine now listed as the leading figure. Her voice, her vision, and her values were no longer framed as the future, they were the present. And in that present, something remarkable happened. The monarchy, so often accused of stagnation, began to breathe again. William, always deliberate and never performative, stepped forward with clarity. In a rare, direct address, he outlined a new code of royal duty, one centered not on preservation, but on transformation. Transparency, service, and humility would define the next chapter. There would be no return to old-world grandeur or outdated hierarchy. Instead, he pledged a crown that served, listened, and adapted. The speech was brief, but the message was seismic. The heir was no longer waiting. He was leading. Camilla, stripped of her ceremonial roles but spared a public dismissal, retreated from view. The official statement cited well-being and rest, but no one missed the subtext. Her reign had ended not with disgrace, but with quiet inevitability. The palace spin was careful, dignified, but the world had already moved on. In the weeks that followed, she was seen only once leaving a countryside estate, her eyes shielded by dark glasses, her silence louder than any statement she could have made. Public response was not just favourable, it was euphoric. Polls surged. Approval ratings hit record highs. Commentators across the globe hailed the shift as the most graceful redistribution of power in modern monarchy. But it wasn't numbers that cemented the moment, it was the heart. In a televised tribute that would go on to define her public image for generations, Catherine stood beneath the royal crest and spoke directly to the nation. Her voice never wavered. "This crown," she said, "weighs nothing without purpose. It belongs to no one person. It belongs to the people we serve." It was not just a statement of humility, it was a declaration of intent. And then, together, William and Catherine appeared on the steps of Windsor, not flanked by guards, not encased in protocol, but hand in hand, stepping forward as equals. The image would become iconic. The future wasn't being inherited, it was being chosen. And the world watched, not as passive observers, but as willing believers. And so the chapter closed, not with scandal, but with sovereignty redefined. But if history has taught us anything, it's that crowns never stay still for long. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.